wanted to do a little add-on um, about hair for this week's podcast because I don't think that I fully sort of got to fully say my thought about hair and how things had changed for me over the years, my view of hair and whatnot. And I wanted to mention that, I did struggle for many years, for most of my life, to accept my hair. It's a very curly, dry hair, and it's very hot, and it doesn't do what I want it to, and it doesn't look the way I want it to. And nobody really makes products for hair that's just curly, that's not afro hair, that's not colored, like dyed hair or damaged hair from products or blow dry or whatever, but just straight up naturally curly, up like type 3 hair, I guess it's called. I don't know. There's this whole new system of categorizing hair, but I just think it's part of this modern need to label everyone accurately so that we don't have to discuss things like what we look like and whatnot. Um, but anyway, so I think that, being able to enjoy my hair and sort of have a completely new, profound appreciation for hair came from a need to separate myself as well from the sort of the tools of the new age. So I was extremely interested in astrology, and I still am, and more so in the past, things like tarot and rune stones and stuff like that. Um, because I saw that they were a way to connect better to the world around me and to nature, and to sort of learn the language that was the ancient language that was a benevolent thing. And I didn't really, I think, ever question that it could be, another corrupted path until more recently, even. And so, hair as a tool to connect with the world around us is something that is both understood by me in a much more historical sense, like I've known that for a long time, but at the same time, it's sort of what I am left with, I suppose, these days, in that I have discarded so many things that I used to hold very close and very dear. And strangely enough, I began to finally, like, I had many friends of mine who were stylists approach me over the years that, who did dreadlocks, and they thought, wow, you should really do this. It's something that would really suit you and suit your hair type and your kind of, be very easy for you to do this. And I never really gave it much thought, I think, because I never really connected to the idea of it until I began to understand that dreadlocks were considered sort of a spiritual quest. And then I found out about freeform dreadlocks, and that is basically the act of not touching your hair, as I mentioned earlier, and just sort of letting it do its thing. And so I really liked the idea of growing this sort of spiritual root, this tool, and developing that, and I think it's very interesting, especially when we think about the modern day reaction is very much concerned with cultural appropriation, and yet if everybody left their hair alone, it would do this, and it is kind of being seen in many ancient cultures to be a prevalent hairstyle of all cultures. I mean, it's in Scottish and Scandinavian and Germanic, as well as it's been highly noted in the Dravidian ancient culture, which is ancient India, and then that's kind of how it made a connection to the Caribbean culture, which is sort of where it has remained from here on in, sort of seems quite rooted there, so to speak, for the time being. And yet, the, it was the worn style of all nomadic cultures, and of which there are many from all over the globe. And so, I wanted to share with you, I've added a video to this. It's a beautiful video, and it perfectly illustrates what I love so much about the idea of dreadlocks, And I also wanted to share a story as well. But there is this man, this video that I'm going to post, and he has been growing his hair for over 40 years, and his dreadlocks show the change of his hair over time. And so they start at the tips, they're very dark, and they begin to fade in darkness until they become very white at the roots. And it's absolutely the most beautiful thing. And he's tied them up just absolutely exquisitely, and they are so clean and so beautifully looked after. They're just, it's one of my favorite videos. Um, and I also wanted to mention that I had watched a video um, about the idea of the warrior um, and hair, and how in more ancient um, cultures the warriors would be the ones with hair, as opposed to the way the military does it now, where they remove hair from the head to basically sever this extrasensory gift that we all have. I mean, this would be a male's sixth sense. They always talk about women's intuition and stuff. This would be man's intuition, if they, or maybe it's called women's intuition because only women were allowed to keep their hair. I mean, who knows? Um, and maybe it's just our sixth sense that we all carry. Should we be permitted societally to have our hair long? But this idea, as I was going to say, that the warrior, out of necessity to the battle, would have to have long hair because it would be part of keeping a connection to spirit, uh, in as a role of a warrior. Some maybe it would create a balance. It would assure a benevolent element to the battle. Should the warrior have long hair? I mean, I don't know. These are all just guesses on my part. But anyway, I really wanted to add that. I hope you enjoyed this addendum to the podcast, and have yourselves a wonderful week.